Vegas on the screen, feeling the flow, so pristine. Boom, as the beats align, electric dreams, they intertwine.
We just need to forget about everything, put away our problems, get along with each other.
All right, welcome on in, everybody, as we are off and running on a Wednesday. Student of the game, live from the Go Live Vegas studio. And boy, does it feel good to be back. It's been a while since I've joined y'all, but don't worry, because we have plenty to cover today, and it'll be like I wasn't even gone. And lucky me, I get to usher in this, this next stint of everything going down in Go Live Vegas, because boy, has it been a productive first couple of weeks of the year, really a first month of the year, as 2026 is off to a great start. This is our first show of 2026, a little bit more delayed than we initially intended, but that's okay, because it comes in perfect time, because to usher things back into play, I will not be doing it alone today, as I am joined by none other, longtime friend of the show, longtime friend and media colleague of myself from Yahoo Sports, Mr. Kel Dansby. We all know him as a combat sports, journalist extraordinaire, podcaster, all-around media personality who covers just about everything on the social media front. Obviously, we're going to dive into the fights and everything going on in the world of combat, as we always do with Kel. But we have Kel with us for the full gambit here today, the full hour, and we are happy to have him here as he is rocking his Derek Jeter jersey. Oh, Captain, my captain. And Kel, obviously, there is so much we could hit on. Whenever I know you're going to be on the show, I actually have to make sure it's somewhat streamlined, because we only have so much time. We could literally talk about anything under the sun. But the only place we could possibly begin now is the Super Bowl matchup that is now officially set. Seahawks, Patriots. It's going down in less than 2 weeks now in Santa Clara at Levi's Stadium. Super Bowl 60, 10 years since the last time it went down in that venue. And obviously, doing this show on a Wednesday as opposed to the Monday morning or afternoon in the immediate aftermath of the conference championships, it's going to be a little bit different, because by now, whether it be just, water cooler or break room talk or anything that you've been tuned into in terms of the media cycle, everything at this point has been discussed. It's been dissected. It's been analyzed, right? Till you could be blue in the face even if you yourself are doing it. So rather than just recap what went down, because by now we all know what went down, I want to kind of have a conversation that I think when you look at the NFC and AFC championship games this weekend, and we will look ahead to the Super Bowl, don't get me wrong. We have plenty of time to do that though, but we'll touch on that. But what we saw in both games with Seattle, with LA, with Denver, with New England was reflective of where we are in just football philosophy, I guess you could say, Kel. And even if you look at the Super Bowl with Mike Vrabel and Mike McDonald at the helm, two defensive-minded coaches, we are even seeing a change from the recent norm there, right? And football, we always talk about it. It's cyclical. It goes in cycles. It evolves, and it sometimes, I guess you could even say, devolves. And things have gotten so advanced and so cute, Kel. You and I have had numerous conversations, most of them actually off air this year, this past season, all throughout the regular season, regarding how so many coaches now leave points on the table. Well, we saw a situation where it's very much contrasted. We saw a situation where both the Rams coach and Sean McVay and Denver's coach and Sean Payton did, I guess you could say, very much, one took an approach that was too aggressive and one took an approach that wasn't aggressive enough. But it just shows where we are, that we want to have this universal thought about it, thinking that, oh, you're always supposed to be aggressive and go for it on fourth down. Oh, you're always supposed to go for it on two. And I just want to open this up with your thoughts, because you've been saying it all year long, how it never seems to work. And we saw in that AFC game with Sean Payton, we'll get to McVay in a second, him chasing points after deciding to go for it rather than kick the field goal at the half, given the circumstances, given the backup quarterback with Jarrett Stidham in And all things coming into play, knowing that eventually the weather was going to take a downturn, he decided to go for it, and it wound up biting him where it hurts. Do you think in the offseason we'll start to see this collective shift that we're like, maybe we need to stop being dependent on analytics. Maybe we need to stop being so dependent on what the media or what the broadcasters may be saying, and just think about, is this going to bite us where it hurts? Because it happened to both McVay and Payton this past weekend, and I think that has to be the main story regarding how those games turned out.
I don't think we see any change. I think you don't see change until people start losing their jobs.
Right.
And you look at the coaches who are very aggressive and taking these risks. They're some of the best coaches in the leagues. Their teams are constantly in the playoffs, and they're not going to lose their jobs. Even you look at Dan Campbell, who didn't make the playoffs this year. Everyone expects him to be right back there next year, and their record was what it was because some of these didn't pan out like it did the year before when he constantly went for it. But then you see Ben Johnson, who came from his coaching tree, that went to Chicago, and it paid out for him until the end when it didn't.
And that's
right.
And I'm happy you bring that up because you can bring up numerous examples, Kel, throughout the regular season, throughout the postseason where this has happened, and yet it seems like the collective, or, I guess you could say the consensus, seems to be honestly divided now in a polarizing type of fashion. One camp is staunch, and you just go on Twitter during a game, one camp is staunchly for it, the other is staunchly against it. And I'm not trying to take away from anything that the Seahawks and the Patriots did, because ultimately we'll get to that in a moment, but when you have teams that are as good as New England defensively, and obviously as good as the Seahawks defensively, you can't give them those opportunities. And I like how you say that, because if there's an element of consequence, maybe these coaches will think differently. But Sean Payton, he has clout, he has security. Sean McVay has clout, they have security. But at the same time, their aggressive style of play calling, at least Sean Payton's in this case, McVay probably, again, not aggressive enough, but not knowing how to properly handle the situation, being a veteran coach, both of them Super Bowl winning coaches, I think it just kind of shows that we're at a point now where guys think a little bit too much in the moment and not enough about the bigger picture. And I know that sounds simple because, yeah, in a way, you want to be focusing on one play at a time, right? Classic Marty Schottenheimer type of shtick. But at the same time, it seems like these coaching decisions are made as if the game is ending right there, not another hour down the road. You know what I'm saying?
No, I disagree, right? I think it's the exact opposite.
Really?
I think that in both cases, whether you go for it, whether you don't go for it, I think it's because the coaches feel they have all the time in the world and they lack urgency. So you'll go for it at the end of the half because I have a whole nother half. They're so used to having all of these possessions, all of this time. Right. Oh, we can come back. How many times do you see Denver come back during the season? A ton of times.
So you think it's
right? They did it to the Giants. They always feel there's this sense of like complacency where it's much like basketball now in the NBA, where you have so many more possessions than you had a decade, 2 decades ago. You're always going to get the ball back. You can always march downfield. In NFL, you're going to get the ball on the 35-yard line, 40-yard line because of the new kicking rules.
Right.
Okay, now we only have to go 60. Now we only have to go 40. That's easy for my quarterback. Don't worry, I can go for it. It takes 40 yards to get this field goal range back later in the game. And they don't realize, like in other sports, the playoffs are a different beast. And it's the reason why the Lions have had great teams, don't have a championship. Why the Bears finally got bounced. Why we see the Broncos get bounced. It's because you limit those possessions in the playoffs.
Right.
Weather has a huge factor. Defenses are better on a week-to-week basis, and you have more time to really focus and game plan for that one team. And the coaches seem to not realize that.
So it's almost
the same
like
gambles they take during the season and in the playoffs lack the urgency of, you know what, I got to treat this like a 5-possession game.
Right.
Not a 10-possession
And
game.
that's a great point because it's all about shrinking the game, right? Shortening things down. And that's one thing that we even saw Seattle do. Seattle maximized every possession they could. All the credit goes to Clint Kubiak for calling an incredible game, where McVay was calling the game as if almost he knew he was, or at least felt he was going to have another shot. So I get what you're saying, and that I do agree with that. Maybe we depart a little in terms of we think that what they're thinking in the immediate moment, but I completely agree with what you just said. Coaches are spoiled now because of the luxury they have with the offenses, with the field goal kickers, and with the field positioning. But with the weather conditions in the playoffs, as you said, with these defenses, with the fact that so many people are going to try to run the ball, take the ball out of your quarterback's hands a little bit to make life easier, that's going to be the norm. And when you have a team like Seattle, obviously New England, it's an issue. We'll talk about that in a second. But with Seattle, who's so balanced and who capitalized every time you gave them the ball back, whether Stafford and the Rams were able to score or not, it was hard to envision any scenario where you walk away without points or creating the shortest deficit you can. That's why I think is McVay, because McVay, we know against Chicago, did not commit to running the ball, right? In the NFC title game against Seattle, committed to it a little bit more. The problem is when you have the chance to go for 2 to cut it down to a 3-point game. Now on 4th and 4, you're kicking the field goal instead of having to go for it. And this is what I mean. All these things that kind of circle back. The New England Patriots Denver Broncos game, after it went to 10-7, it never changed. But it felt like it was just a huge mountain or a huge bridge to cross or to climb for Denver because it was that uphill battle. And you have mentioned it multiple times. We've seen the Giants do it, like before they fired Daboll. We see multiple teams do it. Teams that are regularly aggressive, and even if it works out for them. But we have seen multiple teams have to chase points this year. And it seems time and time again, we're even in the media on our side, we're getting lazy with it, saying, oh, that's the right move because if you score, you go up. Okay, but you're not focusing on the consequence. And in the playoffs, there's no tomorrow. When you mentioned Dan Campbell, when he did that throughout 2023 in the regular season, it was okay because if you lose a random Monday night game to the Dallas Cowboys, you're still playing next week. When you do it in the NFC Championship game against the Niners, you're not playing next week. And that's what is happening now with the Broncos and with the Rams. I don't think it necessarily leads to anything in the grand scheme of things. If the team is built right, if the quarterback situation is appropriate, you assume Stafford will come back. He has those receivers. He's going to win MVP. He played stellar. His defense just didn't help him out when they needed to ultimately. And when you think about it, even when Seattle's defense playing as well as they did, really moved the ball when he needed to against them. Ultimately, he's going to be back. Bo Nix is going to be back, and their coaches are too. But I just wonder if now, since we're at the end of the year, after not focusing, myself and you may have been focusing on our own private text threads, but we may be at a point where we enter next fall, Kel, and this is more of a week-by-week type of criticism from the media, from the fans, because now we're starting to see like a body of work here, or at least comprehensive evidence that suggests it doesn't work. And when you were texting me in week 7 and week 6 how it never works, you kind of look, okay, whatever, big deal. And if it's a team like the Giants who is going to have their coach fired anyway, big deal. But when you're the Broncos or when you're the Rams and you have a chance to go back to the big game, it is a big deal. And I don't think, even though the main takeaway is how good and how appropriate it is that a team like Seattle or even a team like New England advance, I don't think we can truly put last week in a bed until we admit that. Because it's been an ongoing thing, and we saw it again the week before with Chicago and Ben Johnson. We've really seen it just nonstop throughout the year. Only now are we deciding to talk about it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it now lends itself to the unpredictability of the NFL. It's why we have these two teams that didn't make the playoffs last year, one team that was a 4-win team last year in the Super Bowl, because when you take these risks, when you lean so heavily on analytics and it doesn't work out, you leave the door open for teams who may be lesser than on paper to capitalize. Because really now it comes down to who can execute more. When teams are now turning the ball over at an insane clip in the playoffs compared to the regular season. We see Josh Allen turn the ball over a ton in the playoffs.
Recklessly.
Bo Nix wasn't overly great in the games when he did play.
Trevor Lawrence.
Caleb was having struggles and then made a miraculous play.
CJ
Stroud was
abysmal.
on a clip.
Abysmal, right.
Horrible.
Yeah.
You look at Drake May. Drake May is not what is going to be the MVP runner-up.
He's struggling.
Right? Like, he does not look like that guy.
No doubt.
So you have to then question, okay, is it the chicken or the egg? Is it teams are too aggressive and too analytical, and it's throwing off the rhythm of these quarterbacks, of these players, of the team. Because as you get more pressure, you then put more pressure and make more mistakes when you're doing these gambles.
Yeah.
Or is it that the coaches, and I believe Tom Brady has said it, other former quarterbacks have said it, the level of QB play isn't great right now.
No.
And they think it's very overhyped, it's very overmanaged, it's very RPO, it's very bubble screen,
very controlled,
it's very inflated.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the coaches playing Madden, less of the Tom Brady's, the Peyton Mannings, the Drew Brees
100%.
Going out there, dissecting the defense, calling their own plays, realizing that they have the ball in their hands to go and win the game. And I think that's the major change. And we're seeing that as this McVay coaching tree grows, as some of these other coaching trees grow and everyone gets hired there, right? And you see that everyone's copying the same formula.
Yep, copycat league, cookie cutter.
Yeah, and it's limiting what makes quarterback play special is being limited, because now the focus is on these genius offensive coordinators and coaches.
And that's a great point.
Let them do things.
Because you know what? For the longest time, and we got spoiled because of Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, and then on a year here and there, Peyton Manning, or even Ben Roethlisberger and, Eli Manning. And it's like all these guys who are, elite, all-pro, possible future Hall of Famers, like we gotten comfortable with the fact that the coach really doesn't matter. It's just the quarterback. Even the discourse about Bill Belichick and that, and we'll talk about that momentarily, but even regarding Bill Belichick, like we have full-blown documentaries now on television. Was it Brady? Was it Belichick? We have, Andy Reid, who has always been a genius, but with, Patrick Mahomes at the helm, we obviously emphasize him. Sean McVay, but we're going to emphasize Matt Stafford. Ben Johnson, we're going to emphasize Caleb Williams. But eventually it has to come full circle, and the chickens have to come home to roost, because if we're going to act like now all of a sudden coaching does matter in the NFL, and it's not just who your quarterback is, then collectively, we all need to make that a part of the narrative then. We can't just say, oh, this coach has the right quarterback or doesn't have the right quarterback, he's not going to succeed. No, because at one point it was about the coach and the quarterback being on the same page, being on the same level in all ways, shapes, and forms that you could possibly imagine. Brady and Belichick weren't exactly best friends, and Belichick was a defensive guy. They were always on the same page. Manning and Dungy, always on the same page. Sean Payton and Breeze, always on the same page, which is a big reason why in Denver right now, they've accomplished as much as they have lately with a young quarterback in Bo Nix, because Sean Payton knows how to handle quarterbacks. The problem is, though, you didn't have Bo Nix in the AFC Championship game. You had Jarrett Stidham. And the problem is with the Rams, you are not facing, the Carolina Panthers, who even gave them trouble in their own right? You're facing the Seattle Seahawks. And it just kind of shows that maybe we're going to kind of turn the page, Kel, and start putting, as you just alluded to, more emphasis on what these coaches are actually doing rather than just personnel and who your quarterback is. Because if these coaches need to kind of jump back into the flow of things and kind of tighten up on the wheel, we're going to start to see recalibrations for a lot of these offenses. And yes, quarterback development still has a long way to go to kind of get back on track. If anything, it's taken a huge step back, but a lot of that is just because, like you said, overly scripted offensive game plans, not letting your quarterback read defenses, running the RPO, emphasizing the first read, the primary read, getting the ball out quick. And a lot of that comes over as we're college football fans. We're nerds of the scouting process. A lot of that's coming over from the college game. But the problem is if you do, and I get shortening the learning curve, but if you erase the learning curve completely, you start to end up with the problems you're seeing now. And I do wonder if you kind of see a line in the sand moment, maybe not this offseason, but to come in the near future. And we're seeing teams because of it who are built for the moment falter, right? Philadelphia Eagles, perfectly built on paper, horrible play calling, hurt them all year long. The Rams, even as good as they were now throughout the regular season, started to run out of gas a little bit. Even that defense in the back end, that has nothing to do with Sean McVay, but that secondary, Carolina beat them up, right? We saw Caleb Williams tear him apart, a guy wide open in the end zone on that freakish play that never should have happened. And then next thing you know, Sam Darnold and Kenneth Walker are tearing you up. I mean, these things happen for a reason, and next thing you know, you look at the strength of your team, which is Sean McVay and Matt Stafford, and it wasn't enough. But ultimately, we could talk about that till we're blue in the face, and rightfully so. But I did want to open the show with it, Kel, because I do think it's something that not just us in our own little, chat threads and stuff like that, or even on just shows like this are going to be talking about. It's going to be a major talking point collectively for the media and for the football community. But really quick, just to kind of give you an early – oh, and by the way, really quick, we talked about this. I just want to mention this because we said save it for the show last night when we were just, talking shop. That game between Denver and New England would have sucked either way. Drake May has been struggling against the Chargers defense, he struggled against the Texans defense, and he struggled against Denver's defense. All great pass rushes. He showed how mobile he is and how athletic he is. I don't think it's a reflection of his talent. If anything, it shows how good he can be. But it also showed that he's only a year 2 quarterback playing in the playoffs for the first time against really good defensive lines and pass rushers. He was rattled. Jarrett Stidham probably played about as well as he could given the scenario, but it's still a backup quarterback, and the entire country is getting bombarded by snow. Eventually, it was going to happen in that game in Denver. So, all these people in the media, these talking heads that are saying, let's just go to domes collectively, play at neutral sites, keep it indoors so we can enjoy the game because the Rams-Seahawks game was so much better. Shut up. Shut up. I hate that take so much because now we are becoming as spoiled, Kel, as the coaches that you just talked about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're looking around, I think Buffalo's building an indoor stadium.
Yeah.
You have Chicago, Detroit. There's these places where you want to go outside and see these games. You want the weather to play a factor in it. And that's getting taken away. Mm-hmm. And it goes down to the analytics of it all, right? That we're mentioning. And it's easier to throw the ball and run your offense when you're not playing in the elements. And they're really trying to micromanage the game. But I'm with you. That game wouldn't have been good either way. No. Stidham ended up with that horrible turnover, losing the game.
Yeah.
That was the play of the game. Because the defense allowed nothing else. And that was the game. And, you put that into the hands of the backup quarterback. But the fact that he kept it so close was a huge black eye for the Patriots. Because now, are they the worst playoff offense?
Perfect.
Or is the worst Super Bowl offense since the Ravens?
Perfect way to tee it up. Because we saw this line, and these bookies, man, they're quick with it. I mean, you literally have Sam Darnold and Mike McDonald on the podium talking to Michael Strahan in the celebration, and the line's already up. Every year it gets quicker and quicker. It opened at Seattle -4, in 5 minutes got bet up to 4.5. Then about an hour, maybe not even later, was up to 5. It seems that it's stabilized at 4.5, but I expect more movement, especially since they're going to want to try to get as much Patriot money as they possibly can for some two-way action. I don't know even whether you're a betting sharp or a betting square. If you follow the league decently and have followed the playoffs, I don't know if anybody's going to throw down Seattle money or New England money if the line is this tight. The line was a lot tighter than I thought it would be. I know you agree with that. What is your initial making of the game? I mean, I know in the 2 weeks leading up, because to me, the biggest storyline of quote-unquote intrigue, you could kind of make it two-pronged. The coaches, right? Because we talk about football being cyclical. We're kind of going back now, right? We're seeing 13 personnel in the league. We're seeing cloud of dust type of plays. I'm not saying we're going back to, wishbone formation, power eye type stuff, but we're seeing, defensive philosophies and offensive philosophies changing. Defensive guys leading their teams to Super Bowls when we thought that was a thing of the past, and only an offensive-minded coach can do that because they're the sexy, flashy hires. I kind of like how we're stepping back in the timeline a little bit, and this is a fitting matchup to have, one, because it actually has happened before, 10, 11 years ago, and it was one of the best Super Bowls we've ever seen, but also it just shows that there are multiple ways to get here. I know there's a disparity in the matchup that we'll talk about the next couple of weeks because I really do think it's going to be hard to convince yourself in finding ways that New England could really make this happen unless finally Sam Darnold shows up, the old Sam Darnold. But at this point, I think bringing up the old Sam Darnold is going too far back in the past, right? That's like skipping up. Because even in Minnesota, pretty damn good. I understand the end of Minnesota's run there last year didn't go the way they wanted to. But the last time we saw go Sam Darnold, I mean, it was a completely different universe, right? In more ways than one. So I think that at that point, it's kind of an old, tiresome talking point. And when you look at May, who's way ahead of schedule, but also maybe not playing up to par because he is a little ahead of schedule, and the fact that New England does have some weapons, but not like Seattle does, I see a classic case of a team that's overachieving. Shout out to them. Like you said, 4 wins last year, but also a case of a Seahawks team that is built to be here. Because when you look at how good the Rams were built and the Eagles were built, This team has an element of balance that those teams don't have. Offensively, defensively, right? Even losing Charbonnet, you still have the running presence of Kenneth Walker, who played great, and you have a great crop of receivers, the best receiver in the game this year as far as production is concerned. Even if New England plays a perfect game, I don't see them winning unless Seattle plays an abysmal one. I think that's fair at this point, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think the Patriots have shown anything to say that they deserve to be as close as you said the line is.
So then they probably are. They probably are like maybe not the weakest team to make the Super Bowl, but if you look at recent memory, they probably are. If you look,
they're the weakest offense.
Yes, definitely the weakest offense, no doubt about it, and that's not common to see in this day and age.
No, Will Campbell, I'll stick by it. I think he's going to be fine at left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
He is not fine right now.
Right.
Anytime he gets an above average pass rusher on him, he is a turnstile.
Yeah.
Right now.
And he's hurt.
Right.
Yeah.
And he is.
Yeah.
And it's a long season. And for this to be your first season out of college and to go on to play, 19 games now? This is going to be game 20? And last year the guy was playing 12. So you're asking that of a running back now. Who's your best running back is a rookie? Your left tackle, who is a rookie? A quarterback who is in his second year. And your best receiver is Stephon Diggs?
Yeah. And I mean, even, Butte's played very well. And he's actually probably been a pleasant surprise. But are you beating Seattle with them and Hunter Henry? And even if Travion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson play a great game, eventually you're going to have to make the big play to balance or to rather counter what Seattle is doing. And I don't know if they're going to be able to, because that's where the Rams fell short. As good as Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams are in that offense, all the Seahawks needed was, like you said, just one extra possession on the Rams to go their way, and that was the difference in the whole game. And we're at a point now where we thought maybe finally we're in an era where the number one offense is going to beat a number one defense, or even if they're not number one, an elite offense will beat an elite defense. Yeah. And Kel, it's a tale as old as time. It still doesn't happen. And here we are in a situation where the Patriots don't even have a really good offense.
No, the Patriots, I will say, the one, to play devil's advocate, the one good thing about the Patriots is that they have the best player on the field. On both teams. Regardless of team, they have the best player on the field. And that's Christian Gonzalez. He is the best player on the field this entire playoff.
I don't think that's that bold of a statement.
Every time he steps on – JSN is great.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a matchup we're not going to get to see enough because JSN plays in the slot a ton. Christian Gonzalez is on the outside. We're not going to get the Revis effect where he just follows JSN across the field.
Very few corners do that, period. Right.
Yes, he makes those plays. He has changed games for the Patriots. He has been more important for them than Drake May at quarterback.
So he just pass rushers. And look at Chason. Chason was a bust a few years ago. Now he's he had more sacks than Josh Hines Allen and some other elite pass rushers out there.
That team is built because of that secondary. And the pass rushers like Chason are eating and all because they can cover everyone and they don't make back end mistakes. They do not. And Christian Gonzalez will make you pay if you target him. And sooner or later, they force you into targeting him. The scheme by Vrabel is impeccable because he takes away half the field, rushes half the field, and makes you throw towards their best corner. People say, well, pick on the other corner. No, the scheme is such that they lock down and they throw linebackers that way and they crowd it, and Gonzalez is the only place you can throw.
And you know why I love it, Kel? Because before we go to break, we'll pivot into this. It's very Belichickian. Because ultimately, at his core, that's what Vrabel is. That's what he is as a player. And even as a coach, he's going to tap into that as well because he's always been a defensive guy. And everywhere he goes as a coordinator, linebacker coach, D-line coach, he wins. And he won in Tennessee, and they stupidly fired him. That's why, again, May is a big reason why, but it's what he has done with that defense. That is the night and day difference because we knew how porous they were as a unit for these past couple of years, and we know that what Vrabel does well is that he makes sure your best weapon does not beat him. That is what Bill Belichick did. It's not a matter of necessarily, we have to move this guy here. We're just going to do stuff to where go beat us this way. Fine, but you're not going to beat us with your number 2 and you're especially not your number 1 weapon. And that's why it will be interesting because lo and behold, Sam Darnold will have some interesting looks. He will have some interesting coverages, and it won't be a cakewalk to move this ball against New England. No. The problem is if you get that lead and start to gradually build it, this New England defense, it's still the modern day NFL, and these refs with these, these PI calls on the outside, it's still so wishy-washy. Next thing you know, all Seattle has to do is go up 10, and now New England's playing catch-up, and they are not built to do that against a team like Seattle, who because of John Schneider, Mike McDonald, and Clint Kubiak and company are very much built for this moment in ways that we may have not expected, but when you look at it with the benefit of hindsight, their draft picks, their free agency acquisitions, it does make sense. So hats off to him. Again, we'll talk about what they've done as an organization in a short amount of time, just like New England, in the next 2 weeks. And I'm sure we'll have Kel on again for our Super Bowl preview. But we got to address exactly what I just teased her before we go to break, Kel. And that's Bill Belichick, as we now know, is not apparently a first ballot Hall of Famer. And again, since this news broke yesterday, if you've been watching any of the media cycle out there, any of the sports talk shows, on and on at this point ad nauseum about how disappointing and how revolting and how repulsive it is. And that's because whenever someone can collectively have the same in 2026, when we could collectively have the same type of outrage with how divided we are on everything, it is bad. And that's because you said it perfectly. We are just going to reiterate what everyone's saying, what Jimmy Johnson is saying, what Robert Kraft is saying, what people who played for Belichick, what people who are in the Hall of Fame and played and coached against them are saying. If he is not a first ballot Hall of Famer, nobody is. 6 Super Bowls, 8 in total. That's more than anybody in the history of professional football if you count rings cumulatively, because you should, given the fact he was as important to the New York Giants as Bill Parcells was and what he did defensively, right? You add those and the 6 he won with New England, which are 2 more than the next highest head coach, being Chuck Noll with 4. All those guys are first ballot Hall of Famers, as they should be, who don't have that type of resume. And then this guy, who has the greatest resume in the history of professional football from a coaching standpoint, isn't a first ballot Hall of Famer. Kel, I've always thought that Canton, and I get it, sometimes, Andre Reed, Sterling Sharp, Chris Carter, they'll snub a guy because there's this some like ongoing narrative or a bullet point they can't get over. Yep. Or someone like a Terrell Owens who pisses them off and they get egotistical and they can't put their ego down and they won't vote him in the first 2 years when it's clearly a personal matter, but he eventually gets in. I understand that to a degree. Kel, there's no justifiable reason to not put Bill Belichick in the Hall of Fame on the first ballot, and I don't care what it was like since Brady left New England, because you were comparing 4 or 5 years to multiple decades of dominance and greatness. It's a travesty, and Canton as an entity, as a landmark, takes a huge hit. I've always thought they've gotten it right compared to Cooperstown and some of the other ones, and Naismith even. No, this is bad, and this is a major black eye, and they deserve to hear it, quite frankly, nonstop.
Yeah, the MLB is the worst. Let's still put that there.
Yeah,
they haven't
fair.
caught the MLB.
Well, the MLB is literally like so cult like cult oriented. Yeah. It's like a cultist mindset. They're so caught up in tradition, they are almost a parody of themselves. At least football doesn't have that. So you wanted to finally give them the benefit of the doubt, because usually they don't miss on stuff like this, especially when it comes to coaches.
But how much you mentioned Brady, and did you win without Brady? And sure, coaches have quarterbacks throughout the process, and he had a couple of down years. You're not supposed to be perfect forever. You're not supposed to make every AFC title game, right? Like, he changed quarterbacks. Brady went on to win another one at a different place. Congrats. Brady is a first ballot Hall of Famer, sure. That doesn't take away from Belichick. In fact, if Belichick would have stayed, I think they would have drafted Drake May. This kind of would have went the same way. And Belichick would be coaching the Super Bowl. Right. Yeah, where Vrabel is, and I have all the confidence in the world.
And not to interrupt
you, Belichick would be in this spot.
And not to interrupt you, let us also not forget, he took Mac Jones to the playoffs. In that 5-year gap without Brady, don't get me wrong, it was bad. The Cam Newton year was bad while Brady was in Tampa balling out. I get it. But he took Mac Jones in 2021 to the playoffs on probably a bottom 3 to 4 roster in the NFL. Yeah, they got bounced hard. I remember that game, and it was ugly. But that team had no business being in the playoffs. And even in that second stint, post Brady, or excuse me, not post Brady, with Brady, we have such a recency bias that we think of Brady against the Seahawks, Brady against the Falcons, Brady against the Rams. Yeah, we get it. The Edelman, Gronkowski type of teams, those were more about Brady. Let us not forget, they won 3 in the early 2000s where Brady had very little to do with it. It was more of the right leg of Adam Vinatieri and an incredible defense stacked with Hall of Fame caliber players. Not to say Brady didn't do anything. He still led him down the field. He had to be clutch. He had to come in for Drew Bledsoe in a tight spot. It built the foundation of his legacy. But the storyline there, we like to retroactively think it is, the storyline there was never Brady being the best quarterback in the league. It was Belichick and that defense, and then gradually throughout, the 07 teams, the 2 different teams that lost to the Giants. Then we get into the next phase, the next wave. That was more about Brady. You can't gloss over everything else Belichick did, though. You just can't.
How much of a factor was Deflategate and the controversy?
In terms of the greater dynasty at large, or are you talking about just Belichick getting
in terms of first ballot Hall of Fame?
Well, that's a great question.
Because that comes up a lot in baseball, right? Like if you have a mark like that, either you never get in or you get in a lot later because people feel like they hold that grudge.
Yes.
And it's as much as, like you mentioned, even in the NFL, it's as much of a popularity contest and a contest of morals.
Well, Kelvin,
these people feel like they're a judge, jury, and executioner, and they want to punish you for something.
If that's what they're going off of and that is their rationale, if you will, that is the only thing that you could – I think it's still BS, but it's the only thing that you could point to because in addition to Deflategate, you have Spygate, you have some other things that kind of circled around here and there that people weren't big on. I think, honestly, the recency bias of everything with – Jordan and Hudson and the Chapel Bill and everything, the way that transpired last offseason and even this past fall. I think it's a way, like you said, there's a stigma, there's a black eye surrounding the Patriots, mystique, if you will, even if they do have, or at least are tied with Pittsburgh and as for as most Super Bowls as any and now have a chance to win their 7th. I think there still is an element of controversy and there's like a black cloud, if you will, that follows them. And maybe that's it. But like you said, it also hurts the legitimacy of the Hall. I don't care if Pete Rose gambled. I really don't. I don't care if Kennesaw Mountain Landis made it a rule back in the early 1900s or whatever. Baseball at Cooperstown as an entity hurts without Pete Rose. Barry Bonds, all these guys cheated. And it's also interesting because baseball, you look at the disparity between, I mentioned this with a friend of mine recently, Pettit and A-Rod. Pettit this year on the ballot has a 48% increase. A-Rod only like a 2.5, 2.8. It also goes to show we're willing to kind of back off and maybe give you the benefit if we like you. So not only can you not cheat, you have to be likable. And if you do quote unquote cheat, you better still be likable, right? Because Barry Bonds and A-Rod aren't getting in and they rub people the wrong way despite being 2 of the best talents we've ever seen. And without them being in, the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York does not look that good. Well, without Bill Belichick
and Bill is an amazing coach. He is not likable. And he never played the media game. Ever. He never did the injury reports. Yep. He was never friendly with anyone. And they're trying to make a point. Yep. And to the fact of it's so weird as traditional media continues to change and you don't have those same newspaper writers, beat writers, everything. Like all of that is changing so much. This is like the last bit of power traditional media has is the Hall of Fame. Because they don't they don't get the most viewers anymore. They don't get a ton of page clicks. It's not like everyone's dependent on them to know the ins and outs of a franchise or a locker room.
They're more like all accessible. They're more gatekeepers than reporters at this point, right? They're like they're museum curators because they know that they're day-to-day. And this is even a jab at them because we worked in the media. At one point, we've worked as beat writers even in our formative days, right? We know what it's like well before we got into any of the broadcast or digital stuff or in your case, the social media stuff. We know what it's like to follow a beat and hit the pavement like that, and it is becoming obsolete. And if there's one realm where those writers still have a purpose, we know it's in those Hall of Fame voting committees. So that's a great point too.
Yeah, and they're holding on to that power, man. And it's sad because on this same day, Eli Manning doesn't get in again.
Right.
Like, I understand, now first ballot, now second. Like, and it his playoff stats were incredible.
We talk about the college football playoff committee, and there's never a clear-cut criteria. are we going to start asking for the voters for a clear-cut criteria? Because clearly your ego has to do with it, and you being in your quote-unquote feels has to do with it as well. And again, to a degree, we're all human, and these are also, sports writers who are becoming archaic. I get why that is at play here, but when you have a result that leans so negative as this one does, or a headline that reads so negative as this one does, now you have to wait until a whole nother Hall of Fame class to not only get Belichick in there a second time to try to rectify it so you don't look like idiots again, but now you have to come up with a damn good class to kind of, get all of us off your tails. Because now we want answers and we want accountability, and I don't think we're going to get any. We never do. We definitely don't get it with the Baseball Hall of Fame. But again, it just goes to show how there is agendas at play here. And because of that, people will move the goalposts. And a lot of times it just comes down, like you said, if they like you. But Belichick, again, if he's not a first ballot coach, nobody is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Speaking of some other coaches, they may not be Pro Football first ballot Hall of Famers or Hall of Famers at all. We know some of them in the league currently are. Maybe not the ones on the current hiring block, but we definitely do have some big names and established winners who have been hired, and we do obviously have some openings and vacancies out there that are yet to be filled that certainly want to be filled by a winner. So Kel and I will dive into that as well. Don't go anywhere. It's soon the game. I know we went long, but we had so much to talk about in between coaching philosophy and the current state of the game. But hey, what else to do on a Wednesday as we get closer and closer to the big game in Santa Clara? So don't go anywhere. Plenty more chatter on the other side. It's soon the game, live on a Wednesday from the Go Live Vegas studio.
You do not.
Oh my God. So look.
So I can sit down and say, I'm having a really bad day. I'm sorry. You are watching Midlife Mischief.
How are you with avocados?
I love avocados. Are they a fruit?
If nobody eats, I shut down the whole house.
Oh,
I was so done. It was over.
I have menopause. We finally did it!
Interesting.
Go Live Vegas Studios, a unique multi-camera social media virtual content creators paradise. We offer high-end services using live streaming and film production for your personal or corporate, commercial or event and campaign needs. Pre-record or live stream to your audience on multiple social media platforms simultaneously. Fun and interactive with social media comments, phone lines, live remotes, audio Foley sounds, and Snapchat filters. Be creative, get recognized, and make money. We help you by providing an all in-house production team. Visit our website at golive.vegas.
All right, keeping the fun rolling here on a Wednesday from the Go Live Vegas studio. It is Student of the Game with Brett Lawson, joined by none other than longtime friend of the show and media colleague extraordinaire, Kel Dansby. Went a little long there in the first segment, but I kind of wanted to just because, again, we haven't been on the air in a while. We had a lot to talk about. Very rarely, Kel, do we have a news cycle this heavy on the football front that doesn't pertain to the Super Bowl itself 3 days after the Super Bowl has been decided. Because, again, we could do a whole podcast just on why the Hall of Fame is stupid for snubbing Bill Belichick. We could do a whole podcast recapping, Hawks-Rams or Patriots-Broncos. We watched the game like that. But we had to at least give a little time to some of these coaching hires. And we don't necessarily need to go, vacancy by vacancy, opening by opening. We probably actually will at some point in the offseason when we get to more of the offseason conversations regarding drafting and scouting and free agency. But I just have to ask you from the jump, because your colleague over at Yahoo, Frank Schwab, who I've been following for years, is one of the best in the game. We talk about beat writers. He's as good as any football beat writer out there right now. And I can assure you, I will speak for Frank. I don't think he votes for Canton, but if he did, he would vote Belichick in, trust me. But Frank is as good as it gets, and he had an outstanding piece that was released lately regarding the grades of some of these hires. And really the only one that Frank seems to be truly, truly adamant about, maybe two, would be Stefanski to Atlanta and John Harbaugh to our Giants. He gave Stefanski to Atlanta an A, and he gave the Giants hiring of Harbaugh an A+. Now, again, this is ultimately all subjective, but I cite this article specifically because I feel that this is one of those rare instances, and I guess you could throw Mike McCarthy in there too, who, like Harbaugh, is a proven winner with the Super Bowl, maybe reunites with Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh, despite the Steelers fans and media not exactly thrilled about it because it seems like it's the same thing from Tomlin, kind of a linear hire. But I feel that this is the most eventful coaching hiring cycle that we have had in some time, just because of the proven winners who are now at new destinations. Now, that's not to say there wasn't valid reasons for Baltimore to depart with Harbaugh, or for Dallas to depart with McCarthy 2 off seasons ago, right? For Cleveland to depart with Stefanski. I'm not saying that it wasn't justifiable for them to find new places, aka get fired. But the hirings of these guys could not be timed better for most of the clubs who need these jobs to be filled, particularly for a team like the Giants and like Atlanta, who seem to have a foundation there already. And we don't have any audio from Kel. We'll see if maybe he's muted up there. Let's go ahead and try to get that worked out.
All right.
There we got it. Okay, perfect.
All right.
Awesome. Awesome.
No.
All good.
Yeah. No, I think that the Giants got it right, clearly. Right? They have to go find an offense coordinator. I think they were counting on Monken being that guy, but he gets the head job in Cleveland where he gets to prove that he's a quarterback guru and maybe he can carry a franchise. So good for him. But where I do deviate is that Atlanta job. Like Stefanski, I understand he had 2 Coach of the Years. But that
you don't
was
like the record. I know you don't like that record. Yeah.
He won those because he had injured quarterbacks. He then plugged in backups, overperformed, and then was given Coach of the Year.
I get you.
When he had his established starter, for whatever reason, and that didn't happen,
and booted him out.
He didn't win Coach of the Year.
And wanted him gone.
Yeah,
or maybe not want him gone, but didn't do anything to prevent his departure. Let's just say that.
Exactly. He hasn't shown that he can take a team with quarterback 1 all the way through to the playoffs and then earn a Coach of the Year.
Okay.
And by the way, he's going to Atlanta, where I'm not sure he has quarterback 1.
So that's fair. Do you think just because of, the Bijan Robinsons, the Drake Londons, maybe you have something with Penix, do you think this is the year that we see maybe a version of Stefanski that we weren't able to see prior in Cleveland, or do you think it's kind of going to be par for the course? I know we're looking way ahead. We're looking way ahead, but why not?
Yeah, he's stepping into the same exact team he left in Cleveland.
Interesting take.
He had Nick Chubb when Nick Chubb was the guy.
And a lesser defense, too.
But he has Miles.
Yeah.
He always had a pass rush.
Yeah.
Atlanta has 2 stud young pass rushers.
Pierce was great
going
this
to
year.
Get pass rushers.
Yeah, Pierce had an outstanding rookie year.
Yep. They have great DBs, a rookie safety, a great corner. And when you looked back at Cleveland, they had good DBs. There was times when they had a good receiver.
Denzel Ward, all kinds of good guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Grant Delpit.
They had a good receiver a couple of times. And then it was like, okay, I believe like 2 years ago when Jameis went in, or it might have been the Flacco year.
Jameis was last. Yeah, it could have been. Yeah. Because even Jameis.
Yeah, the Flacco year.
That was 2 years ago.
They went crazy. They went crazy. And Njoku stats went through the roof. They had another. Oh, Amari Cooper had an
yep.
amazing run with Flacco.
And don't forget, with Baker, even when you had Jarvis Landry and company, I mean, they were productive. Like Cleveland has had it.
They've had that.
Cleveland's had its moments. We just always are so focused on the record or the lack of playoff success. And I get it.
Because they don't have a stable QB, and he hasn't proven to make a QB stable. You spend all that money in Deshaun Watson. I understand. Watson had off-the-field issues. Then his body started breaking down. I don't know why. Whatever it may have been, he never got the most out of Deshaun Watson. We never came close to seeing the guy that was in the Texans.
At all.
And that's criminal. That has to go to the quarterback guru. Baker, they went to the playoffs and Baker played phenomenally. He got hurt. He never got the best out of Baker. We didn't see this Baker.
Nope.
That's currently in Tampa under him. And Baker doesn't seem to be a fan of him if you check social media. So it's one of those things where he's great at handing the ball off, running the ball, playing defense, picking up some wins that he shouldn't have. He'll have a backup QB come in and look phenomenal for a little bit, but that's not sustainable. And if you are a very good coach, you make your starter, your guy under center, that guy.
Well,
he hasn't been able to do so.
It goes back what we were talking about at the opening segment, right? And if you're not as the head coach able to do that, you have to have an OC able to do that. If you're not an offensive-minded coach, right? That's what Seattle has with Kubiak. That's what even New England, Vrabel never has to be necessarily the quarterback whisperer. Because say what you want about Josh McDaniels, he's a great offensive coordinator. He knows how to get young quarterbacks to play well. We know Sean Payton does, right? Everyone involved in conference championship weekend is exactly that. Obviously, McVay, you could go on and on. He made Goff work. He's obviously going to make Stafford work. You have to maximize your quarterback talent, and that is the biggest hang-up on Stefanski. It's also why Harbaugh got the boot from Baltimore and why Sean McDermott got the boot for Buffalo, because if you have the quarterback talent who is in the MVP race every year, at least if they're healthy, like a Lamar Jackson and like a Josh Allen, not even getting to the Super Bowl is unacceptable. But it's also funny because kind of like with where we are in football now, what we opening in terms of like the timeline, what we open in the show with, we're kind of at that point now in coaching to where if you're around long enough, even Belichick getting snubbed, it kind of plays into it. If you're around long enough, you have to wonder what are people really looking at, because Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh, they have Super Bowls, but I was in high school when they happened. You know, Mike McCarthy has a Super Bowl, and I was in high school when it happened. Don't get me wrong. They've won plenty since then, right? They still have winning marks, and they've been in the playoffs. But when you get so far removed from that Super Bowl, people start focusing less on what you did in the past and wondering more, well, why isn't their present or the current time more like it was in the past? Now, again, context matters. Mike Tomlin had a prime Ben Roethlisberger. Mike McCarthy had a prime Aaron Rodgers. And Joe Flacco went on one of the greatest runs we've ever seen when Harbaugh was at the helm. But at the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to turn it around right away. The reason why
I think Harbaugh had 3 Hall of Famers on that team.
Exactly, 100%. I mean, and you bring in Anquan Bolden, you have the Terrell Suggs, the Ray Lewises, and Ed Reeds on the other side of the ball. Haloti Ngata. It was stacked, right? But at the same time, that works because Harbaugh is a CEO-oriented coach. That's why when we've looked at the success of Baltimore or lack thereof in recent years, it's mainly come off of the results of what the offensive and defensive coordinators are doing. Very much the same way like Buffalo has been, right? Whether it be Daboll, right, or whether it be Ken Dorsey or Joe Brady. We've seen ebbs and flows with Josh Allen and that Bills offense with and without James Cook, and it always changes. McDermott, though, he never really did because he didn't need to. The problem is you ultimately are in a results-oriented business, and if your initial results are different from your current results, sometimes that is a bad look. And I don't think necessarily, he was resting on his laurels. I think more so that goes on Bean and the GM for Buffalo to not bring a number one receiver. Yep. Same with Baltimore. Eventually something has to happen. And I wonder where McDermott will go next. That remains to be seen. But with Harbaugh has exactly what he had initially in Baltimore. A defensive foundation, a talented running back. You have some explosive athletes to make plays with, and a young quarterback. He had all of those things, and we may have a greater all-around talent in Jackson Dart than we did with Joe Flacco in that day and age, where he could run the RPO and do different things that you couldn't do back when he was winning Super Bowls because we're more advanced. So having a CEO coach, I think, is also one of those things that may start, Kel, to kind of trickle back in the forefront. I do think Kubiak and, LaFleur from the Rams, I think they're going to be big hires. I think Kubiak, is going to be possibly the Raiders guy when it's all said and done. So I don't think when you look at what Ben Johnson's been able to do, I don't think we're going to go away from the big-time coordinators by any stretch, but it also just kind of goes to show that teams are going to start looking for the CEO to get the ball rolling, because so often when you have no identity and when you have no solidification, bringing in a coordinator with no experience, it just doesn't do anything for you. It's not the right type of fix, right? You're putting a round peg into a square hole, because there's no point in bringing in a great offensive guru if you don't have offensive pieces.
Yep. So our Giants aside,
right?
And I think everyone puts Harbaugh as like number one hire,
right?
Which hire do you think is the most impactful? Which one do you like most today? Because I have mine. I think it's off the beaten path. Who would you say the second team is that got it right? And I'm looking down this list. I will give you a spoiler of mine.
For coordinator, it's a lot easier to answer than coach. Because you say because mine was mine would be Stefanski, just because I'm probably a little bit more so. I mean, you know me, I'm a Michael Penix guy. I'm not ready to punt just yet. I like Bijan Robinson. I think they've actually drafted. The Kirk Cousins thing was an absolute debacle, but they also have a new GM at the helm, and I think that they'll address the draft better this year. I'm gonna go with Stefanski. Most of my best hires,
they don't have a first round pick.
Exactly right after last year or 2 years ago, and most of my best hires right now are offensive coordinators, like a Brian Daboll for Tennessee and Cam Ward, someone like that. I think that's a great hire, right? Or even like, some of the other ones you've seen on defense. For head coach, outside of stuff, because for me, McCarthy, until they get a new quarterback, I'm not going to prognosticate anything on the Steelers. Anything. They could keep Mike Tomlin, and that would be the case. They could bring in Mike McCarthy. Bill Cowher can finally come back. I don't care. The Steelers are going to be same song, different verse until they completely do what the Giants and do what the Bears have done, go from the old boys club to somewhat modern. But anyway, go on, Kel. Tell me who you got.
No, you kind of teased it. I think the Titans hit it out of the park.
Okay. So
I think
that's fair then. So if we're talking all hires, I'm with you. If we're talking head coach hires, I'd probably go Stefanski number 2. But at this point, I mean, the Titans.
Tommy Reese ran a horrible offense in Cleveland, by the way.
The Titans OC hire may be more important.
Yeah, that's a horrible OC hire to me by Stefanski, but whatever. That's for them to build. I don't think Tommy Reese is that good of an offense coordinator.
I'm with you.
And when you look at Robert Saleh and what he was able to do, you're talking about a CEO, head coach. They all start as coordinators.
Yeah.
Then they become CEOs, right?
Yeah.
Robert Saleh, as great as the defenses he put together and what he did this year with 1 million injuries with the Niners, I think he's a CEO even better than he is a coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
It's just then you have to put talented coordinators around you.
Which he didn't have in New York, and he didn't have any nucleus of talent. Exactly.
Exactly. Yep. I think the talent was building, and the Jets defense, people say what they want. That Sauce Gardner defense.
You had Big Q at the time. You had Big Q at the time. CJ Mosley when he
balling for Saleh. They couldn't score any points, and that's why Aaron Rodgers came in.
The McDonald kid
solved the problem.
The McDonald kid has been a nice defensive end. Most of the Jets' defensive draft picks have hit. They have.
Yeah, and Saleh was really good with that defense.
Yeah.
It's just Aaron Rodgers came in and blew his Achilles immediately, and we never got to see the combination. And even then, the offensive coordinator wasn't Saleh's guy,
right?
Because they forced him in so they could get Aaron Rodgers, because that was Aaron Rodgers' boy. So, the ownership circumvented Saleh, and he was out, and better for him. This time, I think he's going to be given more power. He gets to be the CEO, and now he can go out there and get really good coordinators. And getting Brian Daboll, who was a guy who had tons of head coaching experience. So that team is just loaded up with 2 head coaches. And they have a head coach for the defense and a head coach for the offense. And they don't have coordinators.
And a quarterback who played damn well down the stretch. You bring in the right CEO at the helm of it all, then you just let your defensive and offensive coordinators go to work. Hopefully you could assemble some pieces through the draft, because Tennessee may be as low on skill position talent as anybody out there right now. But it also
Tennessee has $100 million in cap.
Exactly. And Cam Ward played well the last 6 weeks of the season with very little to work with as a rookie. So I think
you know how much the Patriots had last year going into the offseason?
Bingo.
$78 million.
Bingo. And that's the reason why they were 50-1 Hell, it was Seattle. I think they were 80-1, and Seattle was 50-1 at one point.
Yeah, the Patriots loaded up with $78 million in cap. They went and they spent it and said, we have our QB, we can spend it on everything else. And I expect the Titans to do the same.
And it goes to show that a lot of times it's about bringing in the right players, not necessarily the best ones. Yep. You want to bring in the right pieces that will immediately complement C.J. Stroud and Jeffrey Simmons on the other side, because outside of that, you don't have much to work with, but that can quickly change. We are seeing Seattle as a prime example of that. New England addressed the right positions they needed to at the perfect time, where Seattle just had this crazy overhaul of great draft picks, bringing in the right quarterback, and now with the right coaches, you're there. A turnaround in the NFL doesn't take as long as people want to make it seem. The reason why so often it does seem like it's taking long is because they don't get the hires right from the get-go. You have to get the hire right, and you have to not make this whole spiel about, are they cracked up to be as a genius? Are they too old? Are they not experienced enough? Are they young enough? Because at that point, you're just providing hurdles for yourself. The Rams fired on McVay. There was a lot of risk. It worked out. The Lions haven't truly gotten where they want to go to with Dan Campbell, but safe to say that's worked out. Even Nick Sirianni for the Eagles, as much as Eagles fans and media are sick of him right now, you can't say there haven't been results. A year ago, they were hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. So sometimes you just need the right guy. You don't necessarily need the new genius, and getting the sequential steps right after that are more important, right? Tennessee is going to look brilliant if next thing you know, if they have a good draft and a good March period and in terms of picking up people off the market, next thing you know, Cam Ward is looking like a stud in early October, and it's looking like a completely different team. Even if they're still a ways away from the playoffs, that's how you get the ball rolling, and that's what we expect for our New York Giants, possibly the Falcons. We'll see. Again, it's all about having that key nucleus there to begin with. But, I mean, it's going to be interesting one way or the other because – and again, because now Joe Brady, how does he do with Josh Allen? He's no longer an OC. Is he going to be too involved? Is he going to keep the play calling duties? Eric Bieniemy's back in Kansas City. That should automatically do an improvement, even though it's still Andy Reid kind of calling the shots there as well. So it's all situational. There really is no clear-cut answer at the end of the day, and I think it all comes back to getting the quarterback right as early as possible rather than trying to get the coach and then the quarterback, because the Giants, even though we don't know how they're going to do with Harbaugh, they went that order. The Bears have gone that order. The Steelers aren't, and that's why I'm hesitant on the Steelers, but we'll see. Maybe the Titans can join that group as well because, again, the Patriots are definitely in that crop. Bring in May one year, bring in Vrabel the next. Gerard Mayo, easy to forget about, now is your AFC champion. So it's not so much about getting the perfect guy. It's about getting the right guy, and it sounds easier said than done. But we'll continue to monitor this as we get closer and closer. We still have some vacancies to be filled. It will be interesting to see, if Tomlin and McDermott take a year off. It's starting to look like that's going to be the case. Where Kubiak ends up when it's all said and done is obviously he has the biggest game of his life coming up in less than 2 weeks. So definitely a lot to bookmark, if you will. But as Kel said, keep your eye on that cap space and keep your eye on some of these coordinators. One more before we go to break, because I have to bring this up. I'm very interested to see Mike McDaniel now with a quarterback who can do just about everything. Herbert, eventually Pied Piper type of stuff, right? Like you got to pay him, and eventually you got to perform in the playoffs. But at the same time, we have never truly seen what Justin Herbert can do on a week-by-week basis. Even with Harbaugh at the helm. I don't think we've truly tapped into what he can do. I think Mike McDaniel will be able to do things with Herbert that he was never able to do with Tua, that he was never able to do with, Jimmy Garoppolo before him. Mike McDaniel has the most athletic quarterback he's ever had, so I am, Kel, at least interested in that.
I would say I like that direction. I've seen him do well with quarterbacks. I don't care how that looks. I'm excited to see what Mike McDaniel does when he has two bookend offensive tackles, which he has never had.
And that's
so next year when Joe Alt comes back
and
when Rashawn Slater comes back, that's going to be an entirely different offense because they have a rookie running back that can run the rock. And the quarterback's going to be great. All quarterbacks are great under McDaniel.
Right.
What is he going to do when he has two bookend tackles and that opens up everything?
And a defense to boot, because we saw how close they played New England because of their defense. And the only reason New England was really able to stretch away from that one was because of the injuries on offensive line. Herbert was running for his life every attempt. And you're right, because time and time again, Alt and Slater, for all we know, are the best tackle tandem in the league. They're never on the field at the same time. I can't wait to see what they and Omarion Hampton. We saw Quentin Johnson actually kind of get it together.
The return of Ladd McConkey. monkey.
Right.
Bring Ladd back to prominence.
Ladd
baby.
is incredible. Ladd's a full-blown deep threat. Like, he's not just some little slot guy, move the chains, possess receiver. Ladd can take the top of a defense. Quentin Johnson's hands are getting a little bit better.
They found a tight end in the 5th round.
Right.
Who's
Like,
a beast. They're stacked.
I want to really believe in the Chargers, and Mike McDaniel makes me want to believe in him even more. But again, ultimately, it's going to come down to how Herbert plays. I mean, I want to believe in C.J. Stroud and the Texans. I love DeMeco Ryans. I love that defense. But eventually, it's up to these guys to take the next step. And we'll see if they're able to do that moving forward. But again, that's way down the road. Coming up, we'll go ahead and focus on something that's a little bit more on the immediate horizon. In fact, it's smack dab in our face. We're going to go ahead and shift into we'll look back and look ahead to what's directly in front of our face regarding the combat sports realm. Every time we have Kel on, we like to dive into fights. So we have a little bit of UFC 324 to recap and a little bit of UFC 325 to preview on the other side. So don't go anywhere. We'll wrap things up here at Soon the Game on a Wednesday. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment so you can join in on the conversation as well.
You do not.
Oh my God. So look.
So I can sit down and say, I'm having a really bad day. I'm sorry. You are watching Midlife Mischief.
How are you with avocados?
I love avocados. Are they a fruit?
If nobody eats, I shut down the whole house. I was so done. It was over.
I have menopause. We finally did it!
Interesting.
Go Live Vegas Studios, a unique multi-camera social media virtual content creators paradise. We offer high-end services using live streaming and film production for your personal or corporate, commercial or event and campaign needs. Pre-record or live stream to your audience on multiple social media platforms simultaneously. Fun and interactive with social media comments, phone lines, live remotes, audio Foley sounds, and Snapchat filters. Be creative, get recognized, and make money. We help you by providing an all in-house production team. Visit our website at golive.vegas.
All right, looking to put a bow on things here. Soon the game wrapping up, I should say, from the Go Live Vegas studios. It has been a fun one, talking all kinds of shopping. We haven't even gotten a baseball, basketball, hockey, or anything else in the sun. Don't worry, in due time we will. A lot of football to talk, and as I mentioned before the break, some fights to talk as well. But, Kel, really quick, because it's a very pivotal time for the UFC, and it's always a pivotal time whenever, for any sport, for any entity, league, corporation, promotion, whenever they go from one broadcaster to another as far as the coverage and the presentation. And for us who have directly covered MMA, whether it be, through print media, through broadcast media, digital media, social media, we have seen it all. We have seen the transition from Spike TV to Fox Sports. We have seen the transition from Fox Sports to ESPN, and now ESPN to Paramount. And obviously, because of that, and pun very much intended, it is paramount for the company to kickstart it off successfully, because anytime they do that under Dana White and company, say what you want about them, it's a big deal. And it doesn't always work out for them. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Obviously, there's going to be inevitable criticism, but one way or the other, it's a big, big deal. And it just goes to show how far they've come as a television product. But before we dive into that, really quick, I want to touch on the hardwood, because what you have in the NBA right now, Kel Dansby, is the antithesis of a good television product. And I get it. I get that it seems like the NBA, it's almost like a running joke, right? It's almost like candy corn. You're supposed to hate on it because the internet tells you to hate on it, right? Or even like Nickelback was a few years ago. Not a Nickelback fan. I'm just saying they were never that bad. Like no band is ever as bad as people made Nickelback out to be. It's impossible to be that bad as a band, right? Unless you just don't know how to play or sing. But ultimately, that's kind of where we are right now, to where the criticism about why Aaron's looking at me because he's a Canadian. My producer apparently worked on the video photograph from 2005, so he definitely gave me a certain look when I brought up Nickelback. Filmed in Hannah, Alberta, Canada. Those are the insights we provide you here from Go Live Vegas. I'm actually very happy you threw that out. Aaron, next time get on the mic and say that, please. You have one for a reason. But ultimately, though, whenever you can have an opportunity to stand out on television in any league, shape, or form, it's big. And whenever that goes against you, it's easy to pile on. And I get it. The media coverage, the fan reaction to what the NBA is doing, it's almost easy to just jump in on the running gag at this point, Kel. But at the same time, you look at the trade deadline, the one thing that's supposed to provide the season a shot in the arm because we're so distracted from football and everything else. And next thing you know, Giannis, hurt. Ja Morant, hurt. Right? Who else? Kuminga, hurt. Like, they're all hurt ultimately. And then you have the stars who are already established, who are household names, maybe not dominant names anymore, but still household names who help move the public needle. Jimmy Butler, hurt. Tyrese Halliburton, who is a star, comes in the season, misses damn near the whole thing because of the nature of the injury. Same thing with Jason Tatum, right? Like, we're in a period of time now to where, again, I'm not saying it's necessarily anybody in the NBA's fault. Outside the injuries, there's plenty of other things they do that are their fault, but that's an ongoing conversation you could have year in and year out. But I just have to ask you, though, with the injuries of these hot, commodities at the trade deadline that now is all of a sudden null and void, the guys who are already hurt, the fact that you are excited about, teams like the Spurs and OKC because of the talent they have with SGA and Wembanyama, but even then, it doesn't seem to be the main talking point. LeBron's not, a surefire all-star anymore. Jokic is incredible, but he probably doesn't get the coverage he should. Is there anything to truly be excited about in the NBA as a television product? I'm not talking to the diehards or the bettors or the diehard fans who are going to watch inevitably because they always have. I'm talking about to the casual Joes who are just trying to pick up basketball randomly on a Wednesday or Thursday night or turn it on and enjoy it. The same way people are starting to do with baseball, who had a tremendous year, really a past couple of years on the television front, right? NBA is going the exact opposite direction. And I know it's a question that has multiple answers, but what I'm asking you is there anything that you could be excited about as we push closer and closer to that stretch of the season where interest is supposed to rack up, but it's not right now?
There's nothing sexy about the NBA right now.
Thank you.
Nothing.
I was trying.
The NBA doesn't care about regular season basketball.
They've punted.
That is becoming more and more apparent. Once they added and went to the 10-team play-in and you have all those things, 7 versus 10, 8 versus 9. You can still get in. None of it matters. Home court doesn't matter in the 7-game series in the playoffs. We've seen teams treat that. We've seen teams literally win all the games in their opponent's home court.
Play better on the road.
So
right.
It's one of those things where I feel like the regular season is either littered with injuries or load management.
Mm-hmm. And usually it's the latter. This year it's the former.
As long as you have a decent roster, you can make that 10. And then you say, let's be healthy in April, let's be healthy in May, and let it shake out however it shakes out, which is flawed because we see OKC last year care about the entire season, and then we're untouchable for most of the time, right? Like the Pacers cared about the season. It led to one of their best seasons of the past 2 decades. The Celtics always care about the season. Yeah. I believe they're second right now without Tatum.
And for so many years, had it gone better for them, probably would have had more rings than just one in the last 7 years. Right.
And so when they get to the playoffs, they're always a threat. They always go far. The Knicks are struggling this year because they changed their coach. Mm-hmm. But even then, they're a team that notoriously cared about the regular season.
And the
teams that try to turn it on can't do it.
And they won the midseason cup, which is just another stupid thing. You have this midseason cup and try to convince us that it has some relevance or at least just some significance. And it doesn't. If there was a true reason to be invested, I'd get it, even though I'd still be a little because it doesn't make sense, and I don't like having any kind of championship crowned in the middle of the year. But even then, no significance. If anything, the Knicks have sucked since it happened. And as you said, they're still trying to find their footing with Mike Brown. But again, the Knicks have had moves put in place that show meticulous care. Boston, Denver a few years ago, right? Miami before Jimmy left, right? When they were on their last leg under Pat Riley and Spoelstra. But I'm with you. Even if from a competitive standpoint, there are a few teams out there that any, NBA analyst or diehard or better can poke at and say, oh, that's fun to talk about. I mean, come on. You and I could literally pull any fight of decent note, right, or any fighter of decent note, and we could do a 30-minute segment just talking about him because we're nerds like that. Anybody who's a diehard can find interest in any little bullet point going on. That's not what moves the needle. That's what baseball for years was appealing to, and it was hurting them. Now baseball's trying to get that middle-of-the-road fan who just wants to see a good game on a weeknight because there is no football on, and next thing you know, he's following baseball all throughout August, September, and October. That is what Adam Silver and the brass for the NBA need to do. And I get it. It's not going to be an overnight fix. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. But it seems like other leagues, college football, right? Even in outside of professional sports, college football, college basketball, right? Baseball, hockey, fighting even. It seems like when every time from a television standpoint, maybe not from a competitive standpoint, an on the field or on the court standpoint, no. But from a broadcast viewership standpoint, it seems like every entity moves to where they need to move to make themselves feel more modern. At one point, it didn't feel any more modern than the NBA. They were the most progressive league in all of sports. And now it feels archaic because, and I get it, things are changing with the regional sports networks. Sometimes it's hard to find a TV carrier. Streaming sites are now claiming different leagues and different, coverage rights and all that. Like you said, traditional media is completely different. But that doesn't mean when you're trying to jockey for position with Major League Baseball as a clear-cut number two, because in the sports world, if you're the number two, you're essentially the number one. Since the NFL is such a big brand, it's untouchable anyway, right? The NFL is the biggest entertainment brand out there, period, regardless of sports. But if you can find your niche, Kel, at number two, that really does a lot for you. And the NBA right now is a distant third.
Yeah, they're so far away from number two. Like, to the point, I don't know who number two is. Like, the MLB had a great couple of seasons, but really the Dodgers and deferments.
Well, that's and I was wondering if we were going to get to that. No, 100%. I was wondering if we're going to get to the show. I kind of want to wait for next week or maybe the weeks after because the baseball hot stove talk content and the running conversation about will there be, the salary cap, will there be a lockout, which is going to happen as we've talked about that. I want to kind of push that back because I think that's going to be a really good vehicle for us on shows like this in the wake of the Super Bowl. But that's a good point too, because it seems like right when baseball takes five giant steps, or like you say, one giant step forward, it's like they take five giant steps back. So now baseball's right back in the same. Again, don't get me wrong, the things that they've changed as far as regarding the pitch clock and different things like that, that's still going to continue to see benefit. But if the Dodgers just keep doing what they're doing, now we're going to have another controversy there. And it's just funny how it seems like, throughout the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, it's always that league trying to jockey for position at number two. As they got into the 80s with David Stern and Magic and Bird, it became the NBA. Then baseball surged in popularity again in the 90s. Then in 2000s with Kobe and LeBron and some of these other stars, the NBA became really focused on stars and marketing their stars. And then that became the norm into the 2010s with Silver. But now Silver's losing a lot of steam because Silver doesn't know how to get people to care about a Tuesday or Wednesday night basketball game. It's funny how we outside of football, when you kind of stop and smell the roses and see it all moving around you, so many of these leagues and so many of these commissioners and these brands really kind of constantly have their back against the wall. Where meanwhile, Big Raj in the NFL, even with any type of controversy that they may get with officiating or rules or whatever, they're just swimming, man. And it just goes to show you that
NCAA football might be number two.
It is. Oh, no. Absolutely. I think what you just said
and
right there.
NIL is running 100%. Wild, but it doesn't even matter.
You brought up a great point because anytime we're going to talk about sports leagues, you have to ask, are we considering college football and college basketball? Because if we are, college football has become the 1B to NFL's 1A.
That's a pro league now.
The rating,
Like, who are we
100%.
kidding?
NIL transfer portal, it is literally it was always kind of the farm system or the feeder system for the NFL. Now it literally might as well just be what AAA or the G League or the whatever is for the NBA. It is their developmental like full-blown circuit. It used to just be like it was our crop of talent. No, now it's even structured like the NFL. So by the time you become a rookie, you essentially have already been playing as somewhat of a quote-unquote pro for quite some time. And I personally, we've talked a lot about that. I think it's the right way to go. It's all over the place. They need to kind of reel it in a little bit. But at the same time, that was inevitable. And look what happened. College football, you had the Indiana Hoosiers in a year where you had more parity than ever, pull off maybe the greatest storyline in the history of the sport. And the television ratings are approaching NFL levels. Like college football, we always want to get hung up, even on this very show, sitting on this very set. I've complained about what the committee does. Should this team be in? Should this team be not be in? I did it 5 weeks ago even, when Notre Dame wasn't in. And yet through it all, I look back on 2025 and think, man, college football, that kicked ass. When the Seahawks likely beat the Patriots, I mean, again, maybe my pick will change, but it won't. But when the Seahawks likely take care of business and Super Bowl Sunday's a wrap in Santa Clara in less than 2 weeks from now, regardless of how the game played out, I'm going to look back and think, another NFL season, successful one for the Shield, right? Like, there's a formula there. And until you, like, get a formula, which baseball and basketball clearly don't, it's a hodgepodge. It really is.
Yeah, they're grasping at straws in baseball and basketball, and it's just the gap is getting further and further. We'll see if combat sports can slide their way into that.
Absolutely.
Right? Like the UFC has a new deal.
And with that, that's
on Netflix all the time.
Right, and that's a perfect segue, too, because it just shows where we're going with the streaming platforms, the death of pay-per-view, and the fact that, again, when you find a new TV carrier, whether it be linear or more modern, it's going to be big. And as we see right now, thanks for teeing that up, Kel, with UFC 324 in the rearview mirror, a lot of, I guess you could say, public reception about the card itself. I know a lot of people don't like the commercials during the walkouts. I could see where those kinks being worked out later down the road. But just looking at where they are right now, I think in the immediate aftermath of 324, with Justin Gaethje getting his hand raised, second interim lightweight title victory, in that match against Paddy Pimblett, it wasn't beautiful. It wasn't technically sound. It was sloppy, but boy, was it in a way, I should take that back. It actually was beautiful. It just wasn't fundamentally beautiful. But man, the violence, the chaos, the relentless pressure from Gaethje, switching up his game plan, not going with the leg kicks, but heavy forward pressure with wild, aggressive combos. Paddy couldn't do anything to keep him at bay, couldn't effectively really wrestle him. Maybe like slip the jab in there a little bit in the fourth, but ultimately couldn't keep Gaethje off off the forward pressure. Paddy was on his back foot the entire fight. And even though I think a lot of, analysts, a lot of talking heads, a lot of bettors, a lot of diehard fans did like Gaethje in this fight. I mean, he was at plus 190 on the odds. Good luck the rest of 2026 finding better value than that, given the matchup. But Justin Gaethje at this point in his career is not Michael Chandler. It was a much tougher matchup, and a lot of people were bullish on Gaethje. But given the victory, which was a great fight, but honestly, you could still make the case that, I mean, I'd say 3-2, even 4-1. Either way, it was a unanimous decision for Justin. But I don't think Paddy loses any stock. And I don't mean to play the moral victory card here. I really don't. But I feel, given the caliber of opponent and the fact that he could not be put away, he showed his chin, right, as a Scouser. He showed how durable he is, and he showed that he lost to Gaethje, not because he's not tough or game enough or not ready for the moment, but because Gaethje's a better fighter at this point in time. I think it's definitely a back to the drawing board type of moment for Paddy. But if you put him up against a lot of that 155 crop, Kel, I think he's going to be fine if he has one of those guys next. Don't you?
Yeah, I think
he wasn't exposed here, I don't think.
No, he took a ton of punishment, though. Right. You don't want to just compound that right away. But I think what Paddy has to do is, as you said, his chin is amazing. Mm-hmm. He showed the toughness. He came out with more fans than he went in with. That's all great. What Paddy has to do is realize you can't get caught up in the moment. Mm. And game plans are great. Gaethje has one game plan all the time, constant pressure, constant being punched. And the people who beat Gaethje realize, I have to be calm, I have to wait for him to overreach, and I have to take him down.
That's why wrestlers and submission guys have success. I mean, and we'll pivot to that in a moment. But You
And
saw
Patty
when
was that guy.
Habib,
he was a submission
right,
guy. And
that's what
never went for a takedown, never went for a trip. I understand it's hard to take down a wrestler, right?
Yeah.
Like, and Gaethje is a wrestler at his core, but you can trip him. He can overextend. Gaethje said he wasn't throwing the leg kicks because he feared Patty would catch a kick and trip him.
Yes.
But there was other possibilities and moments where Patty could have tried to get him on the ground.
Nobody
and never did.
No body locks, no level changes, no pummeling, no overhooks. And I get it because of the forward pressure by Gaethje, but Patty just didn't even resort to any of the things that brought him there. We always talk about you dance with who brought you there or with what brought you there in the case of MMA, and he didn't. And we've seen Gaethje struggle against exactly that. He's been tapped by Oliveira. He's been tapped by Habib. Now we have to wonder if, Ilya, because that's not looking good at 155 at the very top with the Topuria situation, is now the next fight to make. Arman Tsarukyan for the interim belt against Gaethje, which would be a potentially bad matchup for him, or are we actually going to wait till we maybe see Topuria come back? There's a lot to talk about at 155. Let's be real. There always is, even whether a fighter is truly relevant or not. I mean, Conor McGregor, Michael Chandler could announce a fight tomorrow at 155 and it'll practically break the internet. Like, there's a lot of intrigue at 155, even if there may not be a bunch of relevance from top down, but I still see Patty being relevant. Like you say, he goes back to the drawing board, goes back to the jiu-jitsu and the wrestling, does what got him there effectively. We saw what he did against Chandler, who was an All-American wrestler, and he absolutely owned him. Again, very much of a different type of fighter than Gaethje is as far as the approach they take, but we know that Patty can wrestle with the best of them. I think moving forward, Pimblett gets back on track. I think this is more about Gaethje being a little bit better at this point in time, having a relentless style, the fact that he knew what he had to do, and he looked like the old, World Series of fighting Gaethje from the past, or the early years in the UFC when he's fighting like Eddie Alvarez and those guys. Like, it looked like throwback Gaethje, but it's fitting because at this 37 years of age, this is his last chance to really unify the titles. And we've seen him come up short before. He's a fan favorite. He's a highlight. He's a future Hall of Fame caliber talent. And man, has he been as competitive can be? Because whenever you think he's going to fall off, right after the Max Holloway loss or after the Habib loss, the Charles Oliveira loss, he gets right back on track, and that's why he has floated above water in that top 5 now for 7 straight years, it seems like.
Yep.
So there's a reason he's here. I don't know who's next for him, whether it be Tsarukyan, who, either way, Tsarukyan and Topuria, not exactly a beneficial matchup for him. But let me just ask you, like, in the immediate wake of it all at 155, do you even see Topuria going back to fight for his belt? Or do you think, given what Islam's now doing, do you think when he comes back, I know I'm kind of deviating here a little bit, but do you think that Topuria and Gaethje is ever a fight that we do wind up seeing, I guess is what I'm asking you?
I think we see it next.
Okay.
Last weekend, not this weekend, Ilia Topuria won a huge court case.
Yep.
In his
selling
favor.
Selling his house, as we know today.
Yep. So what took him away from the octagon was family business and a tough divorce, and he wasn't able to see his child, and that's stuff for him to tell. But it seems like a lot of that is clearing up and going in his favor. It was last week where we saw him training again and in the gym, and it's like, okay, like, he's getting back into the rhythm. He's finding that love for the game, that focus again.
Right.
So I think Justin Gaethje, especially when you look at it, Paddy Pimblett would have been a good fighter, would have been a big name or whatever. I think Gaethje is a perfect opponent for Ilya to come back with, because Gaethje's not going to try and take you down.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of punishment. And that right hand, if it's like we think it is, and it's proven to be, that's a guy that's standing there to give you a highlight level win.
Yep.
On your return, where Arman Tsarukyan is just a puzzle to figure out.
Absolutely.
That's a tough fight to come back to.
And in a way, it actually bodes well better for Gaethje, because at the very least, Topuria is a great grappler off his back with jiu-jitsu, not necessarily an offensive-oriented wrestler. Gaethje has a wrestling background, never uses wrestling in his offense, but if he knows that all he has to do with Topuria is stand there and bang, not saying it works out for him, but it's going to be more of favorable for him than trying to wrestle with Arman Tsarukyan. Because as good as Justin Gaethje was as an NCAA folk style wrestler, we've seen him against those types who have the freestyle background. Tsarukyan is of that lineage of obviously the sambo, the judo, now the freestyle. He puts it all together, much like the Dagestanis do. Different, cultural ethnic background, but very similar. Marab, what he's been able to do there's a hybridization of grappling styles, right? We've talked about it before. Taking the best of Sambo, the best of Judo, the best of wrestling and Jiu-Jitsu and bringing them together. Sarukian is that type of fighter, and we saw him put on a grappling clinic against Oliveira where he handled Oliveira's guard, who has maybe the most formidable guard in recent memory. We know what he can do. I think Topuria actually is probably a better fight for Gaethje, while Gaethje is also a better fight for Topuria. And it does make you wonder, given the controversy with Arman and everything. I know he got back on track with Dan Hooker and everything, but at the same time, you have to wonder if they're still trying to punish him for what happened, because he's going to get the shot eventually. But if he's not next, that means he's going to have to wait for the titles to unify and then fight again. And that could potentially be well down the road. So it's definitely an interesting point to bring up. Speaking of not even well down the road, immediately down the road in just a few nights, UFC's back in action. Kel, you may know better than I don't know if they've ever done back-to-back numbered events on back-to-back weekends. Maybe every other weekend we've seen, like with a 2-week gap. Never this, as we immediately pivot and we find ourselves in Australia for UFC 325. And I just want to ask you this, right? Always when you have a card like an Australian card, back in the day they did frequent the Brazilian cards, when you have the British cards, when you have a card with the fighters of those nationalities, and that's what that card consists of. A lot of times it leads to a lot of fun just because of the home crowd. Volkanovski at this point, right? Speaking of Topuria, because we knew Topuria wasn't going to hang around for long at featherweight. It was the same type of thing with McGregor. It's like once he got the belt, you knew he was peace out, chucking up the deuces. He was gone. So even though Volk has had, the Islam knockout, and he's been knocked out by Topuria in the somewhat recent past, with those guys not a factor, it's hard to imagine anyone right now in the 145-pound landscape besting Volkanovski, and that's what proved to be the case last time he fought Lopez. But now, Kel, it's another fight under his belt. While he looked very good against Lopez, Diego still gave him some hell just off the effort and the gamesmanship, right? Volk was never really truly hurt that fight, but he was tested, and now he's got to fight him again. He is one of my favorite fighters to watch, to cover of all time. I think he's the greatest to ever fight at that weight. Is the clock still ticking, though? Because now Diego has yet another shot, and I know stylistically with what Volk can do is with his wrestling and his defensive ability and his movement, he's still very fast despite his age. Do you feel with every Volkanovski fight you kind of have to collectively hold your breath, though? Because you still have to wonder if he gets caught, it could be bad.
Yeah, like the chin never recovers, right?
Ever. You said it for years. Once the chin goes, you know.
Yeah, where it's how much do we trust Diego to take advantage of that?
Right.
And at this point, I think Volk is still good enough to beat Diego. It's more of a 50-50 fight than it would have been in years past, in my opinion, because Volk has slipped up and, he had those wars and he came back, looked great last fight, but also he got hit a lot in that fight. I think the end is very near. This is that homecoming fight. Is it so that he can retire after he wins? Is that the next plan?
Right.
Yeah, it's tough. It seems like this could be his, Rocky moment.
And who else is there to fight? Again, you have a decent pool of talent at 145. A lot of them he's already fought before.
Yeah,
at least a few.
A lot of retreads.
Yeah.
Does he go back up? Do you try one more time
for Topuria? If Topuria doesn't go up against Islam, right?
At least it's not Islam. He's not going to choke you to death.
Yeah.
The Topuria knockout was bad, but it's like, all right, cool. Let me just try again.
Right.
If it's your last fight, what's one more knockout? So he has options. It's just like you had mentioned. I'm not sure anything is great. And if he wins against Diego and it's storybook, it comes down to
what else is left?
Why not just walk away?
Yeah, it kind of feels like after Canelo lost to Crawford, there's really nothing else you need to do. I know that's not the case. He's going to keep fighting, but he doesn't really need to. Obviously, financially, he doesn't need to. And there's not a whole lot for Bud to do either. There's not a whole lot for Alexander Usyk to do. It gets to a point where sometimes you're so good and you start so early, we look at your age and we think there's no way he can be done. Sometimes, like Ilia Topuria does not need to fight that much longer. Islam Makhachev does not, especially now that he's not hurt, killing himself to make the cut at 155. Islam Makhachev does not need to fight that much longer. You look at Topuria. You going back to that really quick. Are you kidding me? What? Max Holloway or Alexander Volkanovski, Max Holloway, Charles Oliveira, and Justin Gaethje? That's like 2004, 2005 Randy Orton legend killer stuff.
Yeah, in a row.
Like, it's insane. And then he fights Islam to cap it all off. Whether he beats or doesn't beat Islam, he's going up to 170, trying to make history at 3 different belts. Like, what else is there to do? And I like the fact we have this conversation. I want to have these conversations more often. It seems like for the longest time, we're trying to pigeonhole last-minute fights for these guys and how it would play out into their portfolio or their resume. Sometimes some guys, their resume is solidified, and a loss in combat sports doesn't change that. Hector Camacho was incredible. One of your favorite fighters of all time. He fought Sugar Ray Leonard in Ray's last ever fight and beat him. No one really ever talks about it from Leonard's point of view. You may talk about it from Camacho's point of view, but that's because at that point in time, Camacho should have won that fight. But what, does it erase anything Leonard did against Hagler, Hearns, and Duran? At all. And I'm not trying to diminish Hector Macho Camacho. You get what I'm saying. When Israel Adesanya fought Anderson Silva at middleweight, it looked like literally like a grandfather fighting a college kid. And I mean, what I'm saying is, like, there was a gap there when just a few years before, Anderson was still relevant in the middleweight picture, right? We sometimes get too caught up in the brand or the aura behind the name instead of where they are at in their careers. I mean, look at how many losses Robbie Lawler dropped in the back end of his career.
Ilya's choice will become not in when he retires or whatever. It's what does he want next?
Right.
Because he's going to come back at the perfect time.
Check boxes.
And do you want Justin Gaethje and your title and to unify? Or do you let Gaethje fight Arman?
Mm-hmm.
And do you fight Conor McGregor at 170 at the White House?
You have to ask it because it's going to be brought up. It is, inevitably.
What is the bigger fight?
Right.
Because he's on pace to come back around that time. And he is a little Conor McGregor clone. He has the tattoos. Yep. He does everything McGregor does. He wants
the knockouts,
McGregor.
picking the round.
If you're Ilya, if you're Ilya, do you say, I want that for my legacy?
And you see, going back to boxing, because there are parallels in both. I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding Tank Davis outside the ring, but in the ring, he's made it clear, he doesn't really care about the legacy or the beating the other GOATs or beating the other greats of his era. He's in it for the money, and it's okay to admit that. Meanwhile, Shakur Stevenson, he wants to be, the next great fighter, Pernell Whitaker type, Roy Jones of his era. You know what I mean? And it's okay.
It's all about the legends, right?
Okay.
Like, what bigger legend than Conor McGregor to have on your resume?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger because even if there may be a win that gives you more competitive credibility, there will not be a win more talked about. You beat Arman Tsarukyan or Justin Gaethje, people are talking about it. You beat Conor McGregor at the White House, the internet is imploding inward on itself.
You are Conor McGregor level superstar.
You have advanced beyond him because you are now the Ric Flair. To be the man, you got to beat the man. You're the star.
Yep. You can go out and ask for a boxing match against Gervonta Davis or Ryan Garcia.
Let me ask you.
You can try to make $100 million like Conor did or push that even further. You are the next superstar. You are Conor, Ronda Rousey level
extension, right? And that's like, before we wrap things up here, I mean, I have to ask you, Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, as good as he was and is on the trajectory he was in between the first time he fought Conor to around the time he was fighting Khabib to attempt to, unify the lightweight title like we assumed that Gaethje will be doing next, right? Like, that was a nice stint. But the Dustin Poirier we talk about now was very much, that whole conversation, that legacy in the last few years was amplified because he got 2 wins over Conor McGregor. One of them was a freakish fluke because he got hurt, even though Dustin was fighting great before that. And the other one, he knocked him out. I'm not saying Dustin doesn't go to the Hall of Fame or become like a legendary fighter without that, but it sure makes it a whole lot easier to talk about now because he beat the top star. If you beat the top star, it almost gives you more of a rub than beating the best fighter. It just does.
Yeah, and that's what Ilya has to worry about. Do you want legacy? Because Conor's only going to fight so many more times. The belt will be here forever.
Yeah.
Do you want legacy and try to add that name and all that to your record? Or do you say, I'll continue on the path of the UFC? And it's really up to the UFC as well. Because I think the scariest thing to the UFC right now isn't pay-per-view sales. There's no more pay-per-views. It's not finding the next big star. Gable Steveson is right there. He might or may not be their next big star. The next Brock Lesnar, whatever. Right. Who knows? Their thing is, the scariest thing for them is we can't make another Conor McGregor. We can't have someone hold us hostage and have more leverage than Dana White and the Shield of the UFC. Yep. And Ilia Topuria Topuria, if he fights Conor McGregor, would be right there.
That's why deep down, I'm convinced deep down, and we haven't even mentioned O'Malley, who got back on track. I mean, 135 is so interesting when you look at the top of that division. We haven't mentioned that. There's a part of me that's still happy that O'Malley didn't really fully pan out, because he, for a while, was pushing that, with how he was getting people over and the traction he was getting before he ran into the buzzsaw that is Merab Dvalishvili. And it just goes to show interesting. 135 could potentially be, because we saw what O'Malley did on Saturday, performed about as well as he possibly could, and so did Umar Nurmagomedov. The odds very much reflected that. He probably should have handled Davison Figueiredo that way, but again, it just shows in the aftermath of that Jan Merab fight, that trilogy fight, you have another potential star-making performance or star-making type of bout. If O'Malley is up to snuff, I don't know if he is stylistically, but again, it just goes to show that deep down they want to find the right kind of star, but not one who gets too big. And that's a great point on your end, because they've had some legitimate guys in the post-Conor years, but no one moves the needle and no one stops the world like him. And I mean, the White House conversation, as you said, as we get closer to that, we're a ways off. But as we get closer, that's going to kind of prove that. And it's going to prove full circle that at the end of the day, the public names, like we talk about with basketball and baseball, or the public vehicle, the general public, that's what moves it. That's what ultimately makes an impact in the greater picture, right? And it truly generates a return on investment. And outside of the National Football League and college football, very few sports entities, promotions, leagues, whatever, are able to consistently tap into that. So I'm with you. It's very much going to be interesting. Already off to a great year on the combat front, but obviously 2026, both in boxing and MMA, really, is going to have a lot of storylines to navigate through. And we'll do the best that we can in our ability to do just that, whether it be with Kel, without him. We always like to have him. It's an added benefit. So, Kel, obviously, you're going to be a busy man the rest of 2026. We hope to talk to you pretty soon. Again, we have a Super Bowl coming up, kind of a big deal. We'll get you on that for our preview special. But in between now and then, go ahead and give the folks watching, listening, the best way to follow you. Obviously, you're very active on social media, but social media is your game. So if it's not Kel Dansby posting it, let them know what content is yours that they could find out there.
Yes, please check out uncrowned.com. I write over there. Shout out to the entire Uncrowned staff. Great social team and social posts there as well. Uncrowned, Yahoo Sports as well. A little bit of traditional journalism and social media work going on over there. So please make sure you guys check all of that out. And of course, you can follow me at Kel Dansby, all platforms as well. I have something in the works coming up in the next 2 weeks that I'm pretty excited about, and I think other people are going to care about. So haven't spoken on it anywhere yet.
Little tease.
So a little tease here, but I appreciate you guys. So yeah, follow me on social media. I'm about to be a lot more active than I've been.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you.
And I love that, because that could be in anything in terms of fight night coverage where he's ringside or cage side, or it could be writing articles about the next Royal Rumble winner, because rest assured the man is going to dabble in some professional wrestling. Kel and I are big on the combat realm, essentially just being stacked on top of each other, the same thing, boxing, MMA, and wrestling. It's just how you go about it and who you interact with. That's ultimately what makes the difference. It's the same exact the same exact engine, but a different vehicle, if you will. But again, that's what makes Kel's coverage so fun. You can follow that and his insights, like as he just mentioned, on at Kel Dansby on social media, and of course throughout the Uncrowned and everything involved in their coverage throughout the combat sphere and anything else beyond. We appreciate it. Great stuff, Kel. And again, we will have him on once more in the near future, because for us, every show can be a football show, because in the off season, we will make up our own headlines. We're Giant fans. We've been doing that for years now, and now we actually have a reason to be optimistic. But great stuff there from Kel. We went a little long today, but hey, with good reason. I had a lot bent up in the tank. I know Kel did as well, so it was nice to have him on to co-host with me. But again, it was a pleasure to be back in the studio in front of you all, to be back on the set. I promise it won't be as long of a gap next time. In fact, you should catch us next week. Stay tuned on social media for exactly when and where, but we will do a Super Bowl preview, rest assured. Even with it maybe being a one-sided match when it's all said and done, there's still going to be a ton to break down and to sift through as we get closer and closer to the big game in Santa Clara. So we thank you. We appreciate you. Have a great rest of your hump day. Have a great rest of your week. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow us. By the way, we have a new website. Pretty cool. Check it out. Go Live Vegas has made a lot of steps already in the first month of 2026. We're on Twitch. We have a new website. We're on all of our regular social media platforms, on our YouTube page, whether it be live streams, podcasts. You want us to go out there and shoot remotes with you. You want to come to us in the studio and do a live talk show or podcast, interviews, different, promotional compilations, marketing, anything you want, commercials, ad reads, imaging, graphics, all of it. The Ultimate TikTok Agency, we have several in the works there as well. Thank you, Aaron. Again, all you have to do is get involved, like, subscribe, follow, hit subscribe, hit like. All you got to do to be in the loop as we move closer and closer to where we want to go. Obviously, we have a ways to get there, but we are planting the seeds now as we are now about, a month into 2026, and we are excited for what's to come. So that'll do it for me. We'll catch you next time. Thank you all so much. It's been Stu the Game live from the Go Live Vegas studio. Have a great rest of your week. Take care.